Why is speaking French so hard? I feel like when we're starting to speak our first foreign language, that is the first foreign language that we're learning as an adult, we get a glimpse into just how much we take for granted the ease of speaking in our native language. In our native language, when we make a mistake, we can easily talk around the subject, find a new way to explain what we want to explain by drawing on our vast experience and database in our minds of vocabulary that we can draw on. But in French, this lack of vocabulary compared to that of our native language is ruthlessly exposed very early on. And so our minds show us just how quickly it's calculating so many different things in English than it can currently do in French. And us as new French speakers become all too painfully aware of that reality. So if you find speaking French so much harder than the other three skills of reading, writing and listening, let's dive into today's video where I give you my 2 cents on this fascinating topic. Allez, c'est parti! Welcome back to the channel tout le monde, or if you're new around here, bienvenue, je m'appelle Alex and I'm an English guy living in the south of France turned French coach for expats struggling to speak French with confidence. Here on my channel we have all sorts of videos around the topics of how to learn the language, how to deal with the emotional side, the confident side of learning the language, as well as all sorts of videos on interesting parts of grammar, vocabulary and everyday French. Click on the like button now if you're enjoying the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a future update. The first reason why French is so hard to speak is its pronunciation, right? From the T in salut, the H in hôtel, to the double LE in feuille and grenouille, and don't even get me started on that horrible word, fourrure? Fourrure? There are so many ways for the pronunciation to trip us up as foreigners. You try and learn the rules, but of course there's tons of exceptions. We're told that S's at the ends of words don't get pronounced, so we happily learn pas and ta, but then you realise in the south of France there's a couple of place names which are Palavas and Bézinas. Why? Don't know, that's French. And then there's words like paix for peace that ends in X. You don't pronounce the X, so then you realise there's a place called Aix-en-Provence and you find out no, it's Aix-en-Provence. Why? Because it's in the south. Another point on French pronunciation is that depending on your native language, different things about the pronunciation rules of French are going to be difficult for you compared to those struggles of someone else. You might have less or more of a natural ability to mimic and to replicate sounds that you hear from other French speakers. For myself, for example, I know that I don't find it too difficult to pronounce most French words, so I never had a problem being understood. But of course, there's still sounds like in serrure and fourrure that take me a lot of effort and I will always be identified as a foreigner for it. You might have to work harder on being understood, and if that's the case, I recommend that you find a teacher who specialises in improving pronunciation and possibly accent reduction. I'll put a link to my favourite website for finding a teacher, italki, down in the description below. Perhaps you find speaking French so much of a struggle because you're overthinking it. You're overthinking it because you want to get every single word right, and I can tell you this is just not sustainable. You might think, oh, I'll just put myself through this tough test of memorizing these phrases word for word for the next week and then I'll be sorted. But no, you're just kidding yourself. You're making the challenge 1,000 times worse because next week, and even in the next conversation, you're going to have to say things you don't expect and you're not going to get it word for word right. So if you're basing your satisfaction of your speaking on how close to 100% of the words you get right in every conversation, I think you're setting the bar too high for yourself and you're setting yourself up for a confidence catastrophe. Similarly, you could be underthinking the challenge of speaking French. You could be not defining clearly enough what it is that is appropriate for you to be targeting as a speaking goal for you specifically at this stage of the process. Don't go into each conversation without considering what it is you actually want to get out of it. What do you want to prove to yourself that you can do. You're not going to sound like a native because you are a French learner. This is early on in your journey and you are just starting to speak the language. So you need to have clearer, smaller, tangible, achievable goals for someone at your specific stage. A lot of us would say that, oh no, of course I don't think I'm going to be a native tomorrow. But I think that if we don't set an alternative goal, that's sort of the default which floats around in the back of our head because we'd rather not put the time in to come up with a goal. It feels too much like hard work, right? But a lot of how much we struggle and find the challenge of speaking difficult is down to how well we prepare ourselves for our current reality. So if you're finding speaking difficult, then I am willing to bet it's because you aren't targeting the right stuff or you are putting too much pressure on yourself for this stage. Get really clear and specific on a really simple goal that you know that you can achieve. I guarantee you that will give you so much satisfaction. Even if it's speak one sentence to my French colleague tomorrow about anything, that's at the same time specific and really broad. But if that means that you speak one more sentence in French to that colleague than you have before, then that's achievement and you're allowed to feel good about that. Equally, you could say to yourself something more specific about, I want to use 10 new adjectives 5 times this week, talking about my family. It's very specific and you've clearly defined it. And that is how you move forward regularly in French. You get clear on what it is you want to achieve at any point in time. Learning to speak French as an adult takes a lot of courage and a lot of acceptance. Courage to let yourself sound silly, courage to let yourself make mistakes, courage to let yourself take your time. Acceptance of these 3 things is huge because once you achieve it, once you allow yourself to take time over what you say, you'll be able to construct better sentences because you're not stressed about feeling like you have to say it as quickly or as smoothly as you would in English. Courage to make mistakes because you need to make mistakes and get corrections regularly so that you don't make them anymore. If you're too afraid to make them, then you won't get the corrections and then you'll never ever speak. And if you let yourself stay in this cycle without fully accepting these things, you just won't ever speak and therefore you won't change your opinion, change your perspective on the difficulty of the challenge of speaking French. Of course it's still difficult, but it's a lot easier once you face it. And this acceptance doesn't come from 1 or 2 conversations. No, you'll find a little bit and then you'll come back. You'll find a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and it takes time. It takes time, it's a process. But speaking French is definitely more difficult when you haven't yet found all the courage to regularly put yourself out there and let your ego take a hit, because that's what it truly is. We all have an ego. We all want to seem capable in the eyes of someone else. By the way, guys, if you want to get your hands on some quick, actionable tips for how to become a more confident, competent French speaker, then I'll leave a link to my free guide down in the description below. Go and check it out. Now, a lot of how you perceive the difficulty of speaking French to be depends on that other person in front of you or those other people in front of you to whom you're speaking or trying to speak to. Who are they? Are they a stranger? Are they a friend? Are they a teacher? What is their nature? What is their character? Are they patient? Do they correct you a lot? Do they let you speak? Do they make it easy for you to continue the conversation? Or do you not really click with them on a personal level that's nothing to do with the language? If you don't take these things into account and then you have trouble speaking to them, of course you're going to think that speaking French is a really hard thing because you think I'm constantly struggling to have a conversation with them without considering all these other factors. Sure, you could be making mistakes. Sure, you could be taking time. Sure, they could seem to be being impatient. But you know what? You have to do all these things to get better, to get more fluid. And if people are there rolling their eyes, for example, that's going to put you off. You're going to lose concentration. You're going to lose faith in yourself. So that's going to make it harder and you're going to make more mistakes, right? So you might feel like speaking French is hard, but a lot of it might be to do with the fact that the people you're speaking to are not the right people. Now, sometimes you're going to have to speak to the wrong people, especially if you live in a French-speaking country, because it's part of your day-to-day life. You need to run into people, you need to run errands, you need to speak to people at the bank, at the library, wherever. But a lot of your practice you should be getting from a professional, someone who's there to work with you on your French, who are likely to be a lot more patient, who are likely to know when to correct you and let you flow. Because when you realize that you have a lot more time and they're there for you and actually you're where you're supposed to be, you start thinking, hey, French is a challenge, but I can do this. When you constantly try and speak to people who aren't there for your French, you're more likely to get really low on your confidence and therefore think that speaking French is this never-ending challenge that you may want to give up on because it's just too hard. So there you have it. That's my 2 cents on why I think that speaking French can be perceived as a really, really difficult challenge. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a challenge, but I want you to come away from this video feeling more positive, more like you can achieve it if you have the right mindset in place, because a lot of the difficulty of the challenge of speaking French is actually one that is perceived. It's not necessarily as difficult as we make it out to be. So get control of your mindset and your perspective, and I think it will become a much easier task for you. Put yourself in a French learning environment as often as possible to see people who are more like you, to see how it is to have a bit more time, a bit more patience, things like that, and that will change how you perceive the challenge as well. Voilà, c'est tout pour cette vidéo. Once again, guys, if you do want to become a more confident, competent and comfortable French speaker, then I do encourage you to download my free guide, a link to which is down below in the description for you. But I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. Click on the like button down below. It really helps me spread the word to other French learners like yourselves. Subscribe or abonnez-vous if you are new to the channel and you want to see more of my videos. Until next time, everyone, merci beaucoup d'avoir regardé. À la prochaine. Ciao.